Hello everyone, we are from the second group. Before we do the presentation, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Luh Desi Meliani as the first speaker and my partner.
And I am Desy Sanabila as the second speaker.
I'm Kadek Noprianti as the third speaker.
Well, in today's presentation, we will explain about differentiated instruction from its definition, purposes, characteristic, and other material that are related with differentiated instruction. Before any further ado, I will start the presentation by explaining about the definition of differentiated instruction. There are lots of experts have defined what differentiated instruction is. According to Sarefa et al. 2019, differentiated instruction or DI is a teaching strategy teachers adopt to attend to students' diversity in inclusive classroom. According to Levy 2008, differentiated instruction is a set of strategy that will help teacher meet a child where they are when they are enter the class and move them forward as far as possible on their educational path. And according to Tomlinson 2014, differentiated instruction is a teacher's response to learners' individual needs and is implemented through flexible grouping, ongoing assessment, and respectful tasks, which are all part in the planning process. So it can be concluded that differentiated instruction is a strategy of teaching where the teacher did the observation to understand the differences and similarities among students and use the information to plan the instruction. Now I will explain about the purposes of differentiated instruction. There are two purposes of DI. The first one is to ensure all students are engaged in the learning process by providing tasks that meet each individual needs. And the second is to handle differences in the classroom and thus to provide inclusive educational opportunities for a wide variety of learners according to SMET 2017. And what is the characteristics of differentiated instruction? According to Carroll and Tomlinson 2001 in her book How to Differentiate Instruction in Mixed Ability Classroom, the first characteristic of DI is proactive. It means that the teacher proactively plans differentiation to address a variety of learner needs, as opposed to adjusting a lesson plan when becomes clear that it is not working for some students. Second, differentiated instruction is more qualitative than quantitative. It means that DI or differentiated instruction involves adjusting the quality of an assignment to match students' needs, not varying the quantity of work. Third, differentiated instruction is rooted in assessment. Since addressing students' individual needs is the core of DI, the teacher looks for every opportunity to get to know the students better. It can be from conversation with students, classroom discussion, students' work observation, and formal assessment. Then teacher designed and modify learning experience based on assessment findings. Fourth, differentiated instruction provides multiple approaches to content, process, product, and learning environment. For this characteristic, it will be explained by my partner, Desy Sanabila, in the next slide. The next characteristic is student-centered. It means that all students should participate in respectful work that is meaningful, challenging, interesting, and engaging. The purpose of the goal is to help students become a self-reliant learner and to share the responsibility to their learning. Differentiated instruction is a blend of whole class, group, and individual instruction. It means that the teacher uses a variety of instruction strategy to help target instruction to learner needs. Students work in variety of group configuration as well as independently. And the last characteristic is organic. So what it mean by organic? Organic in here it means that teacher constantly evolves through collaboration between students and teacher, which includes setting class and individual goals. The teacher should monitor how learning fits in student and make adjustment where necessary. After I explain about definition, purposes, and characteristics of differentiated instruction, you may curious why teacher need to give a different instruction to each student. Well, this material will be explained by my partner, Desy Sanabila. The time is yours.
Well, thank you. I am Desy Sanabila and I would like to continue the presentation. Well, next I would like to explain as a teacher why do need to apply the differentiated instruction in the classroom. There are many students in the classroom who have differences in the character and also in the ability. Well, in this slide there are 5 reasons why teachers need to apply the differentiated instruction. For the first reason is every student has different needs in the learning process. For example, like when the student needs to take a note to remember the material, then there will be the other student who doesn't need to take a note to remember. In this case, there is a difference between the habitual of student. Next is every student comes from different educational background before they come in their classroom right now. Why is it important to know about it? Of course, it is important because there will be differences between the system of learning process in their educational background, and it has an impact in their learning outcomes before. The teacher needs to know if they want to match the new learning system of student. Next is every student has different attention spans and interests in the learning process. When students have strength in something, possibly the other student will have the weakness in that case. So the teacher needs to know who needs more attention in their classroom. This is also applies for students who have their own interest to learn something. As a teacher, we can't force students to like our class, but we need to make students to feel enjoy in our class. Next is every student have a different language ability. Because our focus in the future is teaching English, so we will find many students and we will know the ability of students to apply English in the class. There are students who can speak English and also there are students who can't speak English. And for the last is have a different culture background. Why do you think it is important to know? Because every culture has their own habitual and it will influence the student attitude in the class. Well, let's move to the other topic. This is about how to look at student diversity. Actually, it will be divided into 2 parts, and for the first is differentiated by content. Content was referred to as the information students needed to learn, and it included what teachers taught and want students to learn. Next, process. Process was referred to the tasks of students in the learning process and how they gain understanding of the material. And products. Product was referred to as the assessment or evaluation criteria used to determine that what students have learned and understand. Usually, product will focus on large section of material in learning. And next is differentiation by student readiness. Student readiness was defined as where the student was at in terms of an understanding or skill. Differentiating based on the level of readiness of student is needed by educators to assess prior knowledge and determine what students know and where students are. Next, interest. Interest refers to student likes and curiosities. It is related to specific topic or a general area. There are three basic goals of identifying student interest. The first is the student to form connection between personal life and also in the learning. And second, it enable the student to grow the familiar. And the third is gathering intrinsic motivation to learn. Next, learning profile. Learning profile sometimes refers to as just learning style, refers to the manner in which that individual learn best. A student learning or could be influenced by learning style preference, intelligence, and preference related to group size and culture and also gender. Next presentation will be continued by my partner, Kadek Noprianti. Time is yours.
How the implementation of differentiated instruction. There are 5 steps of how to differentiated instruction in a classroom. The first step is differentiated instruction begins with selection of standard-based content. The second step is determine students' readiness and interest through diagnostic testing or learning inventories. The third step is delivery content varied through student interest, learning style, and readiness. The fourth is students work on varied activities, and the last step is takes questions and reviews the standard with whole class. This is the example of the implementation of differentiated instruction in classroom.
Teaching for English language learners is good teaching for everybody.
It is definitely about building their literacy skills, but also their confidence. I have a range of students from beginners to high intermediate students, so I use the inductive strategy because it can meet the needs of everyone.
Yes, making connections, because she said the word remember. This makes me remember.
The goal is to make the lesson accessible to all students. You want to see my picture? No, Dad. We don't like your picture. You do like or you don't like my picture? Oh, that makes me feel sad. Background knowledge is not just what students bring to the class and what they learned previously, but it's also providing students with the information they need to be able to access an upcoming lesson. Most of the students in my class actually speak 3 or more languages. Okay, English just doesn't happen to be one of them yet, so they're learning. Write it? Yeah, in Pashto or in Farsi.
Fair is not equal. You know, and it's true with differentiation too. I mean, not everybody will get the same exact text or use the same strategy, but it's fair because you're meeting every student where they are and we're helping them progress to the next level.
Okay.
So he said he don't like it.
Sometimes I pair students by same proficiency. Other times I might choose a more difficult text, but pair my beginners with a higher proficiency student.
Red title, middle school, the worst years.
An easy way to differentiate is to put videos at slower speeds. It's not just a list of strategies. It comes out of building relationships with students. When I was first learning Spanish, I was very scared. Creating an environment where students are willing to risk, where people can have a sense of humor. 2, 4. I teach English, not math. 2, 4.
I think of differentiation more like a mindset than on Tuesday I differentiate. You're constantly thinking, how do I make this accessible to everyone? All right.
From the video, we can conclude by using techniques such as pairing up students and changing background knowledge, teachers can make a lesson accessible to every student in the class, regardless of language proficiency. The strengths and the weaknesses of differentiated instruction. The first strength is student-centered. Student-centered, this approach ensures classes are focused on the needs of the students, not the needs of the teacher. In the past approach, students were asked to be passive learners. They simply observe the teacher's instruction. It also ensures the teacher is focused on the student's need. It gets the teacher to think about how they can write lessons that will help students overcome hurdles and learn in ways that suit them. The second, it strives for equity. Equity means that everyone gets a fair go. It doesn't mean that everyone is treated exactly the same. In a differentiated classroom, the class is more equitable because the teacher gives every student due consideration for what their needs really are. For example, if the teacher was dominantly a visual learner, so their learning materials will always very visual. The students who are visual learners would have a big unfair disadvantages in the class. But through varying the lesson is taught, the teacher ensures all students get a chance to learn in their written way, thereby helping them all to get a better chance at learning the content in their own way. The third is give students choice. Give student choice. Different classroom also allow students to learn in way they like. We all may have preference for learning in a certain way. When we give students several choices about how they want to learn, we empower them to learn in a way they enjoy. This way can dramatically improve the learning experience of students in the classroom. The fourth, increase engagement. When students are taught subjects that are targeted at their needs, they are more likely to engage in their material. They will feel less isolated. They will also feel their voice being heard. Therefore, they are expected to be more willing to approach the school with good intention and enthusiasm. They may even develop the love of studying. And the last strength is increasingly possible with technology and AI. Although it may be difficult to differentiate lessons, it is getting easier. We now have technology that studies students' strengths, weaknesses, and preference. With technology, the teacher can vary the way lessons taught more effectively. We move now with the weaknesses of differentiated instruction. The first is time-consuming and research-intensive. Planning 6 lessons a day is difficult enough. Now, imagine having to vary each lesson for all your students. This has become very time-consuming. Likewise, if you want to differentiate the learning process, you will need a lot of research. One student may want a computer, another may want books, and another may want to go to the local museum. Suddenly, you may have many research needed to juggle them all for one lesson. The second, often leads to dumbing down the content. Teachers see differentiation as permission to full content for students who have difficult learning. They will vary the lesson so that some students have easier lesson than another. On the one hand, this may make sense as teacher-student learn in their zone of proximal development. But in one hand, it can also be used as an excuse for having low expectation of student. The third, unrealistic in the content of standardized text. Most teachers have to prepare students for standardized exam. This is a task that requires students to complete all of the same exam in exactly the same way. The standard test is the opposite of differentiated class. The fourth, cannot be done for every student. This is unrealistic to differentiated class lesson for each student. There is not enough time in a day to vary the lesson for all the students in your class. Therefore, the teacher often vary lesson not for individual student, but for a small group. They may group students in 3 or 4 groups. It makes differentiation easier but crowded and less effectively. The fifth and the last weaknesses is student needs to learn in all way different. Even if we differentiated learning so that the student can learn in way they personally like, we may be doing it a disservice for our students. For example, if a student say they would rather learn through film, they will never get better at reading. Perhaps the teacher should encourage students to learn in way they find difficult to correct their weaknesses. To conclude the presentation today, I'd like to explain again that differentiated instruction is a process that exists in the planning, execution, and assessment level of being a teacher. The goal of this instruction is to make the lesson acceptable. In conclusion, differentiating instruction is a way to teach an increasingly diverse population of students, holding high expectation for their achievement while honoring their learning style and preference. Thank you.